Welcome everyone to another episode of Disruption Talks and its special issue. I'll be hosting for you for the next 5 weeks, where we'll focus on an important topic of the sustainability in the retail industry. During our Disruption Talks, we discussed a lot about innovation in retail. Our guests put a lot of emphasis on how important it is to focus on the consumer and their needs to build frictionless shopping experience. But today, I'd like to add sustainability to this debate. And over the course of the next 5 weeks, we'll raise the topics of circular economy. We'll talk about how to reduce the waste across the whole supply chain. We'll present retail brands that are pushing towards sustainable consumption, and we'll discuss how technology can help us act together to make a positive impact to our environment and global societies. Let me start with introducing myself. I'm Nat from the content team at Netguru. I'm leading the team and I'm passionate about sustainability, so that's why we wanted to bring this topic to Disruption Talks. And our first guest, Jinder Kang. Welcome, Jinder.
Hi everyone, how you doing?
Is our innovation consultancy lead at Netguru. He's an advocate of human-centered design and agent of change. He's got more than a decade of experience working with businesses, consulting how they can bring innovation to change through product services and business strategy. Hello, Jinder. How are you doing today?
I'm very good today. I very much love that introduction.
Cool. And let's move to the second guest. Gio Giacobbe is a CEO of ACBC, a company on a mission to improve the conditions of the planet, bringing technological innovations in the fashion and the sportswear industry. Gio has worked for companies like Acer, Tommy Hilfiger, and Petere, to finally set up the company that produces sneakers from reusable materials. And the materials include things like apples, corn, recyclable materials like plastic, if that's correct.
Yeah, and many,
right. Cool.
and many more, but it's okay.
Cool. Welcome, guys. And then let's not drag this introduction more than unnecessary. And then let's jump to the first question. Are retail brands authentic in their purpose? Jinder, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll go first if you like. I would say it depends, like the safe answer all the time. And I would say it depends on what part of the sector we are talking about. As someone who's been in and around retail for the best part of the last decade, I'm very heavily leaning towards that no. I haven't seen enough from the traditional retailers. And what I have seen is companies such as Gio's being able to create these niches for themselves through the idea of authentic purpose. Very interested to hand over the microphone to Gio.
Well, if we are talking about sustainability, I would like to underline the ACBC, anything can be changed, is fashion sustainability leaders. So actually means that we are doing collaboration with more than 25 different brands. So we bring sustainability as well to 25 different brands. Most of them are even public and much, much bigger than us. And in sustainability, or something that we are trying to do is concrete and something that in the future will be the normality, the new normal.
So Gio, if you don't mind, I would love to have a follow-up question. So you have a very impressive CV and the companies you've worked for. What made you take this route to ACBC and get involved with this sustainability?
I was nominated as well, one of the top 100 manager for Forbes. For example, this one is give me a lot of proud because we are talking about sustainability. Actually, the first jump that I did is from manager to become an entrepreneur, and this one is a huge step. Then try to do the entrepreneur in a sustainability sector, even if the world is not sustainable, is the second jump. Why? I lived 5 years in China, in Shanghai. I have to say that they improve a lot the pollution, but the pollution is something that really hurt the people. I mean, before that, I was living in Europe, Berlin, Milan, Switzerland. You don't really feel how the pollution and the impact could affect as well the life of the people. In a country like China, India, Southeast Asia, Japan as well, but as well right now you can see as well on the sea side of Italy or Europe, really we are damaging the world. Just I remember one time, because when I was in Asia, I was managing all Asia path, and from China I was flying to Japan, and I was shocked. It was a fantastic blue sky from the airplane. You can see the ocean, and from Shanghai to Tokyo, most of the fly you are flying on the ocean, and was brown. After 1 hour fly, was brown, was not just the coast, was in the middle of the ocean. And that's something real. It is not the climate change in 2030, 2050, 60, 70, whatever. Was 3 years ago in the middle of the ocean. And that's something that the people has to realize to do something. Small or big stuff, they have to do something.
So that's very, very interesting, Gio. Sorry, Nat, to interrupt. So
yeah, I just wanted to say that I get shivers from like listening to this. Go on, Jinder.
I was just going to say it's funny how it's a very similar story for me. So I'm a former resident of Shanghai as well, and there was nothing like that to actually show me the effects of the industry I was working in at the time, and it really brought that image home more so than anything else I've had read or researched, etc. Just by living in it, you actually see that picture of the impact we're having and the impact that we will continue to have unless we curtail certain practices that we're all guilty of supporting in the past.
So actually the retail industry is one of the biggest polluters in the world. I think after oil industry, from polluting the water, polluting the air, we release a lot of emissions to the retail industry releases a lot of emissions to the environment. So on the other hand, there is a big push on the consumer side, but we still don't see that change happening. So why do you think this is so slow within that industry?
Can I answer?
Sure.
Okay. ACBC is focusing on sneaker, okay? And think about that. We produce 23 billion sneakers per year. We are technically 7 billion, so 23 billion sneakers per year. The emission of CO2 from MIT research is equal to the production of cars of Germany and Italy altogether. Okay? So this is the industry, and it's just a part of the industry. Why take so long? We are fighting every day to try to change through our collection, through the collaboration that we are doing. It's not so easy to change because it's a matter of there are not enough sustainable raw material to serve Nike, for example. There is not enough company, supply chain certified to serve 23 billion shoes. There is not recycled material enough to substitute all the material in the footwear. This is the reality. The good part is that the customer is more and more sensitive on this category. So when there is demand, sooner or later there will be an offer. When we are doing a collaboration, for example, we sign a collaboration with Missoni, for example, ACBC per Missoni, will be live in November. The first approach is that the mindset of the people must change, okay? In the fashion industry, the business model, the stretch business model was design, produce, and sell. Sell online, offline, retail, multi-brand, independent, whatever, stock, outlet, and so on. Produce everywhere. China, India, no matter what, depending on the price. The first is design. I design what I like, no matter what material I'm using. ACBC is trying to introduce two pillars. One pillar is you cannot design whatever you want. You have to design on the basis of the material that I give. Because those materials are sustainable, the other materials are not sustainable. So you have to design from that. So the design. The production. We have to produce only in a sustainable factory, sustainable supply chain, certified supply chain. Sell, of course, here is a topic, retail, online, who is more polluted, whatever. But the last point is circularity. So taking the shoes from the customer and doing something else. This process is very complicated, will be much easier in the future. More customer wants sustainable product, and more company will be in line and align they're gonna align the business on a sustainability model. It's a matter of demand.
So, Gio, thank you for that explanation. I'm just going to play devil's advocate for a moment, right? And ask you, when you have had these conversations with these larger brands that you're tying in, did you come across any other blockers other than raw materials? So the idea of legacy mindsets and so forth.
People and investment. The approach, so that's why when I say sustainability, unfortunately right now, is not a matter of black and white. The life is full of gray. So, but it's a point of white. So dark gray, you have to start from a point. You cannot do black, I drive, I do the corner, I do white. It's not possible because the people are not ready, the supply chain is not ready, the materials are not ready. But definitely in a situation where we are, if you open a company right now, must be sustainable.
So I 100% agree. And what's very interesting is in my conversations in the industry, what I ran into the most was the people issue, shall we say, and the idea of legacy mindsets. And when we talk about sustainability, we have a tendency to sometimes talk about that triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. Yet that singularity of thinking in profitability and EPS performance, etc., was often a massive blocker because we can't, as you say, go from black to white or white to black, right? There's a lot of gray, but that requires time, and sometimes there's a short-termism that kind of clouds the judgment of why we need to do this, why we need to drive the sustainability efforts forward.
Also want to ask, because you're talking about the people, and the people are not only the people working in those companies, but also the consumers who are willing to be more, like they are more aware consumers who are making more aware choices when they're doing shopping. But still, I don't feel there is enough, not enough people can either they either want or either can afford to buy, pay premium for those like sustainably made shoes or clothes. So right now, those brands that are producing like a sustainable, they are still the consumer must pay premium price. So,
but it's not.
How do you see?
It's not true. I mean, first, it's not true that sustainability is expensive. Okay, because depend what percentage you want to do on sustainability. I mean, first of all, does it exist 100% sustainable? Okay, whatever, and we are talking about greenwashing. No matter who is gonna say 100% is not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm thinking that 5% is better than zero. It's not 50%, it's not 60%, at least it's 5%. If everyone add 5% on the business, almost we have no problem on emission. So even the customer should be educated that doesn't exist black or white, and always the customer feel black or white.
So I'm just going to address 2 points there. Nat, to your original point, I agree sustainability doesn't need to be expensive, and it's this idea of moving further into the grey and eventually getting to where we need to be eventually, right? And we've seen high street brands, for example, start the idea of circular economy. So that opportunity for you to take in your former H&M clothing, recycle it, and receive a voucher to use it within the store, right? So that's a step in the right direction. The second point I wanted to address was this idea of Gio that you mentioned of educating the consumers, right? We've seen it grow, and I suppose my question is, what else needs to be done in order to push that education of social purpose, social responsibility onto the consumer as well?
I believe that the only way to push the customer is continue on this direction. I mean, before COVID, the sustainability was a problem, but now is emphasizing a lot. So we have to somehow say that the COVID accelerates a lot these need, no? Because at the end, the only good way to see COVID was being locked in the house, and there was only a blue sky in some city that never happened before, you know. So this is pollution, and this one is, a matter of fact, accelerated the idea of being more sustainable, and it's a matter of time. It's good. It's a wave. The wave is coming. We don't know when, but the wave is coming. What we have to do, we have to be prepared. We have to do the things in the right way, in a sustainability way, increase always the level of sustainability. We decided to not use animals, so we are animal free. But I cannot just... yeah, please. I cannot
we have a very interesting
to use animal, because otherwise how can you sell bags for €3,000? Then the customer will complain. So the customer of Chanel is not asking a Chanel animal free. So it's a matter of the customer.
So that reduction in demand in certain sectors of the industry to drive down the supply and therefore the need for unsustainable practices, in essence.
Yeah.
And Nat, sorry, over to you.
We have a very interesting question from one of our watchers. What is the role of regulators in making retail more sustainable?
Retail means a store, right? You mean this about...
That's correct.
Okay. The store is done by, I mean, if we're talking about fashion stores, is talking about how you build the store, how the energy is built in the store and used of the store, and then the product must be sustainable. That's a different, I mean, the retail somehow, if you use materials that are certified from supply chain that are certified, the retail, the box is certified. But then what happened in the box is a matter of people and product.
And just to add my view, when it comes to the role of regulators, if retail is honestly authentic in its purpose, the idea of regulators shouldn't be needed, right? That idea of self-regulation, because you have an authentic purpose that you're striving towards, and you're self-regulating your supply chain, your modes of transport and logistics, your production methods, etc., right? So that's, I suppose, one of the chief ideas of authenticity in your purpose.
But as we stated at the very beginning, as you said, that retail is not really authentic in the purpose, at least not yet. There are very few companies like ACBC. We have Patagonia, who pretty much started this purpose-driven, it was one of the first purpose-driven retail brands. But there are still a lot of companies that they're not really authentic in the purpose. So do we need those regulators right now helping out to be more sustainable, to produce goods from reusable materials and so on?
So it's a very interesting question, Nat, and I love it that you use my own quotes to argue against me. I would say not necessarily, which is as vague as my original answer of it depends, right? And it's because, as Gio pointed out, any new company that enters this space will have to have a sustainability angle, a sustainable purpose. And when it comes to the traditional companies that exist, I suppose it's that idea of exactly one step of what Gio was saying, is there has been an increase in tie-ins with sustainable brands. Do I believe it's enough? I would say no, Gio. But I think it is that move into the right direction. And I think the worry I always have about regulation on an industry is they, A, are always behind the curve, and B, policing it in certain ways will reduce the authenticity in the purpose anyway. That's my viewpoint. Open to you, Gio.
I checked some question here. I believe that we have to divide the retail and the company that are doing retail. If we are talking about a company that is doing retail, here we have to definitely, the company should start the process of sustainability. So means that they have to care what they produce, how much they produce, and I mean the environmental, people, always the same stuff, products, supply chain. If we're talking about retail itself, the store, this one is a combination. We cannot just talking about the store itself. So if we are talking about retail, so companies that are doing retail, definitely they have to start from the beginning, from the base of the company, and start to change. And the regulation, I believe that the best regulation are the customer. If the customer asks something, the company, sooner or later, they have to change. If the government is settling a regulation, there is always a way to find other way to do it. I mean, but the best regulation is the customer start to say, I don't want anymore the 4. For sure, the company, retailers or whatever, they will not have any more fur.
And I agree with that, right? So it is this idea of accountability, and that accountability has to be pushed by the consumer. We used to live in a day and age, I'm old enough to remember it, where, you know, there was a story of bad practices within retail, but it died as the newspaper was thrown away and the story wasn't seen again. But we live in a constant world of information now, and you're held more accountable, especially in a time where I would argue trust has decreased and skepticism has increased across society in general. And as a result, I think brands are held more accountable by the consumers. And I think that, like Gio, is the best form of regulation. And as Gio also mentioned, regulations have a tendency to hit new entrants and create barriers to entry. The larger players have a tendency to work their way around this.
So you're also saying that basically those companies should be showcasing what they are doing to make the environment better, that they're producing sustainably their fashion garments, clothes.
I think they should be honest, Natalia. I think they should be perfectly open and honest and say, we are making this move into that direction. This is what we're working on. We realize we're not perfect. And then you'll have that authenticity.
And one of those brands...
Sorry, please,
so
Nat, carry on.
So one of those brands that are doing this is Everlane. I don't know if you've heard about the brand, but they have a radical transparency approach where they basically share everything, all the costs from materials, manufacturing, transporting, how much it actually costs to produce a piece of clothing. So what do you think about this approach?
I'm a bit fan. Sorry, Gio, please go.
Please.
I was going to say I'm a big fan of full transparency, and I think consumers want that. I think one thing I really like on your website, Gio, for example, is the material, knowing exactly what materials have been used in that production of that shoe. I want that story, and I then have a story to potentially tell, especially if the brand wants to convert me into an advocate. So I'm, like I said, open transparency across the entire supply chain, big fan, but I understand we're not there yet with the incumbents in the industry.
And is that because there is too much to hide?
I'm going to pass over to Gio. No, I would say...
Well, I'm a fan of transparency. So think about that. We have this model that we call sustainability disclosure. So identity card of the product. So I believe that as well fashion, food product, they're going to have the ingredient immediately easy to read for the customer, so the customer can choose. And this one, I really appreciate the transparency. I do not appreciate the approach of this company because it is misleading the customer completely. Because it's not matter only about the product, how many people they have. They're going to add as well the salary cost. They want to add as well the marketing cost. Because actually the company is not just the cost of product. The cost of product is the first voice of a P&L. Then there are the OPEX, the salary, the investment, and so on. So if you do only this part to say, hey, we are cheap, whatever, you're misleading the consumer. Or you are, I mean, even Zara is selling something cheaper than this guy that they are doing. And for what? They multiply it for 2, and maybe it's too high or too low. It's a business model. I mean, if you want to be transparent, tell me where the product is made, how it's made, and what material are done and used, and what you do in terms of wastage and circularity. That's what you have to tell me. Then if you're making €1, €2, €3, €4, this is a matter of the business model of the company. We decided to be very cheap in terms of a sustainable sneaker, but cheap or expensive depend about who, what is the customer that is in front of you. I mean, doesn't mean that we are cheap. For me, it's okay. I mean, for a Gucci customer, it's cheap. For whatever customer, is expensive. I mean, it's not a matter of, look, I show you the margin. We are a startup, we are losing money. So what? I'm going to ask the money to the customer? It's a matter of where you do the product, how you do the product, and what is the impact that you have on the planet. It's not because it's cheap, so it's good, so it's sustainable.
I agree. From what I looked at their website, they do add labor cost to the whole equation.
How much? Please, how much is the labor cost? What kind of labor cost? Is Chinese, Indonesian, Italian, German, the United States? So this one happen and change. This one has an impact. Don't tell me labor cost in a word that is completely different from African to Japanese. Doesn't mean that it is sustainable.
And I agree when it comes to the idea of what transparency needs to be shared. And it is the idea of what's the production method that was used, what's the logistics, what's the journey it's taken, what's the materials used, and so forth. That's what I would want to see in full transparency of the supply chain. And also a very important point, when we talk about what consumers care about in the future of authentic purpose, is how you treat your people. It's a very big part. And the problem in certain retailers is the answer would be not well, right? And that's a very big story that I would prefer to have open, to have transparent. What are the conditions like in the place that these shoes are being made, these garments are being made, and so forth.
100% agree. But let's just get back to circular economy. And there's a question from Daria. She quotes the number that 13 million tons of textile waste is produced every year. So how can we actually just take the step back and maybe not produce that more, and then basically leverage what we already have on this planet and what we already produced, and basically created this whole waste that we could leverage in our production?
Gio, I will let you go first.
Well, here is for sure. I don't want to. I mean, customer, company, whatever are people, human, no? The problem of these 1,000 of stock available in any company is due to the fact that the one single factor that is completely contrary to the fashion is change continuously, and every 2-3 months, 11 days, whatever, the style. Because actually the production model, when you go to produce, no matter in Argentina, China, Indonesia, is not a matter of races, it's a matter to how to, not anymore made in, but made how, okay? Made how. Let's say that all those companies are perfectly sustainable, because they are. Chinese companies are super sustainable most of the time, more than Italian companies. I'm Italian, okay? So the made in Italy, okay. The point is that to have a certain price, they need a certain volume. To do the volume, you need an amount of customer. If the customer or the game of fashion is changing every 2 weeks, changing every 3 weeks, the product means that you have to produce without having a customer. After 3 weeks, that product doesn't work anymore because you have new product. And this is a circle. This is a circle. Or we stop this circle and we do something more carryover, and the company are doing that, are trying to do that. Otherwise, we will have always a lot of left over, always, because the production could not reduce the number of pieces to produce. And that's a matter of fact. They cannot produce one pieces because otherwise it's not production. The cost will go to 10 times. On the other hand, if we continue to change the collection, you need to produce stock, produce stock, produce stock. So this model must a bit change. Having the kind of evergreen model, always the same, but then at the end is part of the human being different and wants to try something different. So this is the dilemma. Different is produced with biodegradable material. That's something that could be a solution. Or circular economy could be a solution. I don't see a real solution on, of course, we're going to decrease the number of drop in a collection, so the number of wastage, that's for sure. But the problem is what you do on this and how you, trust me, any company wants the stock. Any company. If you ask any company in the world, Zara, H&M, or whatever, you like to have 1 million pairs of shoes in your stock room? They say no, for sure no. But the game has to change, and it's not easy to let change from white to black.
Jinder?
So I agree. I mean, it's difficult. I think Daria has really put us on the spot there. It's a difficult one to answer is, can retail be justified as being a sustainable industry? Because I think both of us have said it's on a journey and it's nowhere near there yet. And what I would say is it's in reducing that 13 million tons of textile waste produced each year, there are ways, and that idea of circular economy, of reducing that. So the idea of bringing that material back into future products and garments, you know, the idea of potentially growth of leasing when it comes to certain items as well. But then it's I suppose there's other things that you could also use here, and the idea, I suppose, not so much with brick and mortar, but on the digital side, and the complementary services that could potentially help you to understand demand for things before they're in production. That ability for people to, for example, use virtual try-ons and see what the general demand might be for these garments before you put them into production. The use of visual search and artificial intelligence to be able to predict trends. However, as Gio has pointed out, in certain sectors of the industry, such as fast fashion, that's a very difficult model to follow because they are used to changing the style within their products within very short cycles. And it's not something that will rely on predicting future demand for the very next cycle or so forth, right?
Yeah. So let's get back to B Corp companies. Like ACBC is one of the B Corp certified companies. Well done. So we still have a very few in the retail industry. Why do you think it is so?
Because being B Corp is not easy. And so it's tough. It's tough, and I know that many companies, for example, in the sector, wants to become B Corp. Wants to become B Corp means change the business model. So at the end, they say no. At the end, I'm not able to do right now. So I repeat, the good part is that every single fashion company is thinking about sustainability, except a few that I don't want to say the name. So it is the right approach. It is the right, and yeah, and then more and more company will become a B Corp for sure.
So I agree with Gio in the sense that I think more companies want to move in this direction. However, I still think that there is this legacy mindset of profitability focus And therefore changing the business model, as Gio mentioned, that creates fear of change and so forth, right? And also, this brings me back to the original question then. Is it a question of greenwashing? Is it a question of whether they're inauthentic in their described purposes? I would say not necessarily in all cases. I would say there is this movement towards there. There's just a long journey that they're on, and it would take a long time to get there. To justify as well to shareholders sometimes that you want to reduce profitability to focus on the other two elements of a triple bottom line, people and planet, it can be a hard sell. It's not an easy thing to do. As someone who's come from it at a consultancy side, it can be difficult. And I'm sure Gio has run into issues in the past in pushing this idea of we need to have qualitative metrics, not just quantitative metrics and performance indicators.
And I think it also comes down to using sustainability as one of the trends that are there. And I do believe some of the companies see it that way, that it's basically something that we just need to follow because it is important for people right now. But sustainability is actually something that we should put in the core of the business, and it should be something that should be implemented in the whole strategy. Would you agree?
I definitely agree. Most of the company, they feel that it's a trend, and it's always a matter of the customer that they have to let them understand that it's not a trend, but it's the new normality.
And I agree with that idea, because I remember in 2010, a lot of organizations across a lot of industries were pushing the idea of corporate social responsibility. And it lived a very strong life for a couple of years, and then it slightly disappeared again. But I think this time, the cycle we're in and the kind of generational push, brands are being held accountable for this. And I think sustainability and the drive towards it is here to stay, especially because, as Gio painted a wonderful image earlier, we can see the effects a lot more than we have been able to in the past. And I think brands, some of the worst polluters in the past, have, yes, they have a fear about the impact on the bottom line, but they also are starting to have that fear of the impact on the bottom line if they don't follow the sustainable practices.
So do you think it's still more trying to, just basically not taking the risk and they can't afford it? It's actually authentic. They do believe that it should happen. Because right now it comes down to, do you actually believe that we need to change because we need to save the planet, or do we need to follow that because at the end of the day we will be losing profit, maybe not in the next 5 or 10 years, but in a long-term vision?
Well, it's that idea of creative destruction, right? No position is sustainable in the long term, and this idea that we can stay as we are, does this work for us for the last 20 years? It doesn't work, and you have to innovate or die, and you have to innovate towards what the customers are demanding, what the customers need. That is going to be sustainability. That needs to be part of your purpose moving forward.
And I have one more question. What distinguish the brands that are purpose-driven, that have the sustainability in the core of the business? When you think about the Patagonia, ACBC, and many other companies that are B Corp certified, what's the common element? What are the common elements?
Okay, B Corp is evaluating the company on 5 different areas. So is product, supply chain, people, stakeholders. So because actually it's important as well to communicate this environmental status on not shareholder but stakeholder to everyone. So means. And then how you sell, okay? Those are, let's say, the 5 areas where B Corp evaluating you. Then, of course, sustainability is a big word, and again, I believe that the people and the reaction of the people are the most important way to let the company change. If I remember when I was young, Nike was Porsche because the famous balloon was made by kids. And this one, there was no sustainability. Even the word of sustainability doesn't even were there. But I still remember, and I'm sure the Nike from that point start to change completely, or trying to change and check every single production and facilities. And that comes from the people, not from the government. I mean, that's why I repeat to say the power of the people, the power of the customer is the biggest the impact that any company could have. So if the customer continue to say, no, I don't want to anymore, I want a vegan product, I want to, where you are doing the product, how you do the product, the company are not stupid. They have to align themselves to the standards. They set the standard.
We have a comment from Daria that is that opinion that making the consumers accountable for the pollution is like making them accountable for sustainability, for the choices, like making them accountable for the pollution due to oil extraction. So in her opinion, it's definitely the governments that should be in charge of that and focus on the long-term goals.
Gio,
before
do you
we
want
get
to take
to
this
the
one
reality.
I want to answer because, okay, so here we are talking about sustainability on a very, very big level, and is like the sex of the angels, you know. So, but of course, the government is important that it is doing their part, but then at the end is a matter of the company. Because let's say that China is regulating actually, absolutely they're doing, regulating the environmental and social responsibility on the factory. Who cares? Nike is moving to Liberia. So the world is big. It does exist one regulation for the world. Or we are talking about Star Wars, is the same. Doesn't exist. The bigger point, that doesn't mean that the state doesn't have to do what they have to do, but means that if the customer start to say, I don't want to anymore, I judge Nike because they are doing the balloon from the kids, no matter where, no matter what regulation, I mean, because they can move a regulation to regulation. I mean, we can even open the topic of the taxation of the e-commerce company. So it means, I mean, we cannot expect that all the country are doing the same regulation everywhere. It doesn't happen in the world. There are still war in the world. We believe really that the company has to, so the states has to agree on a global regulation for sustainability. Okay, there is a Paris Agreement of whatever. Doesn't even matter. Doesn't matter. The most important point is that the customers start to use sustainable products, start to buy sustainable products. And then I'm talking about oil and gas. Okay, I want to say just one example that happened when I was in China. I was talking with a very high-level top manager of an automotive company. They just invest, no matter if it's true or not true, or right or wrong, 10 billion euro for a new, fantastic, we are talking about 5 years ago, 10 billion to create a new factory for a fantastic new car, but not electric. Okay? Think about, then we can open the same, the battery, no battery, whatever. But think about a company that just invests 10 billion euro. How much time takes to turn this factory, brand new, with 10 billion euro investment, to an electric factory. So it's not black and white. I mean, the company are investing money. They have an investment. They have to turn the investment to another direction. But everything happens if the customer, as is happening right now, is starting to buy the electric cars. But then I don't have an electric car because I don't have the column with the electricity. So what I do? I'm living in Milan. There are no battery, how you charge your Tesla car or whatever. What you do? I'm not able to buy. What I do? So the ecosystem has to change and needs time. How you say, Rome was not built in one day.
True. The only thing is, like, I think we are a little bit rushed into making the changes like really quick, because the environment, like the way we impact the environment at the moment is huge, and then how retailers and other companies are contributing to that change in a negative way should probably.
So the one thing I would add to Gio's response to Daria, because I'm on Team Gio in this. Sorry, Daria. The government plays a specific role, and it should be that idea of long-term targets. But as Gio has mentioned, companies will move. I remember they've tried to bring in taxation for where the money was earned. It never happened on a global scale, and it won't happen, right? Other countries would lose other countries will lose their competitive edge. Similarly to the taxation, the Dutch sandwich, the Irish burger. There's a reason that these companies play these kind of roles. So it is down to the idea of the education of the consumer, and not to say that the accountability is on them, but the idea is that the consumer should be in a position, having been educated, to understand, to hold those brands accountable for their actions. And I do remember the Nike and Gap issues from my youth as well.
Okay, I think we are running out of time now, so I think we can wrap it up with that last controversial questions from Daria. Do you have any final statement you would like to add? I mean, maybe let's come back to the first question. Do you believe the retail will be in the future more authentic, and what needs to be done to get there? Just three sentences from both of you.
I absolutely believe in human, so I believe that something will change. It's just a matter of time.
To survive, so I would say right now, no, not with the incumbents, but in the future they will have to be authentic in their purpose.
They will have to.
They will have to be.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thanks for all the watchers who joined us live, either on LinkedIn, Facebook. We're going to finish now. Next week, we will have a discussion with Jinder on can technology help retail get its act together? And we will be following more topics every Thursday at the same time until mid-October. So I invite everyone who joined us today for the next talks. Thank you so much again, and I will see you soon.
Thank you very much. And Gio, thank you very much for the conversation. And Nat for hosting.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.